reminded me of Breaking Bad
Larry
right there. I thought it.
Eisenberg was born in Idaho in 1950, a true local who
Look at
spent
my
his
dude.
entire life in the
You could,
state.
I was about to say, you can tell he spent his whole life in the woods just chopping down fire and hunting, dude. That's all he wanted to do.
He grew up surrounded by forests and lakes, the kind
Yup.
of landscape that would shape his entire
Fishing, hunting,
life.
and firewood.
From an early age,
His
he
three loves.
understood the value of hard work, a principle he would carry with him every single day until his last. He attended the University of Idaho, where he earned a degree in forestry. It was the natural choice for someone who had grown up watching the timber industry pulse through his community. After graduation, Larry built a solid career in the lumber business, eventually rising to become an executive in the industry. Colleagues knew him as tough, disciplined, and relentlessly frugal. He wasn't the type to waste money, and he wasn't the type to tolerate laziness. In 1974, Larry
Appreciate you, my
married his
guy.
first wife. Together they had two children, a daughter named Jessica and a son
You
named
guys have a
Dean.
good night.
He raised them with the same principles that guided his own life: work hard, stay honest, be a straight arrow. His kids remember him saying things like that all the time, drilling into them the importance of integrity and effort. The
Man,
marriage
we're just a W guy. Everything I've heard so far right now, he's just a peaceful dude that just wants to live off his land. Simple as that.
lasted until the children were grown, and then, like many long unions, it quietly came to an end. Larry and Lori's paths crossed through the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce, where both were active members of the local business community. Some accounts suggest she was hired as his secretary while he was still married, and that their relationship began after both their marriages had ended. Either way, by the time they became a couple, they presented themselves as two people embarking on a new chapter together. Lori Barnes was born in 1953 into circumstances far different from Larry's steady Idaho upbringing. She grew up in a sect of the LDS Church, and her childhood was marked by serious poverty. There were periods when her family had so little that they squatted in empty farmhouses, moving from place to place, surviving on whatever they could find. Despite these beginnings, or
I
perhaps
never feel bad for people like this because, like, I grew up eating ketchup sandwiches, shit like that, having nowhere to stay most of the time, this and that, blah, 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 and stuff like that. And I ain't no psychopath.
because of
Growing up in
them,
poverty don't affect
Lori developed a
nothing. That
personality
just
that
makes you
drew people
stronger, in
in.
my opinion.
She had a
And
smile
I've been
that
through
seemed
it, so I feel like
genuine
I have a
and
right
a
to an
giddy
opinion on
laugh that
this.
put others at ease. By the time she reached adulthood, she had learned how to make people like her, how to present a version of herself that inspired trust. At 19, in 1973, she married Stephen Barnes. Over the following years, they had 6 daughters together. Lori threw herself into motherhood, and by all outward
6 kids? My dude got busy. 6 daughters, too?
appearances, created a stable home. Her daughter Amber would later describe their early family life as perfect: church every Sunday, lessons about living right, making good choices, getting good grades, doing chores. The structure that Lori had lacked in her own childhood, she seemed determined to build for her children.
Always.
The marriage to Stephen lasted
That's
over
a
2 decades
reasonable reaction, though.
before
When you
before
grow
ending
up with less, you always want to give your kids more no matter what. So, I mean, can fully understand that mindset there.
in 1996. At 43 years old, Lori found herself a single mother, and she made a significant decision. She would start over in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. In this new
That's where my
city,
boy was at.
Lori reinvented herself. She became deeply involved in community work, eventually earning the title of Volunteer of the Year from the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce. She was the kind of person who showed up at events, who remembered names, who made connections. Eventually, she rose to become the executive director of the North Idaho Housing Coalition, a nonprofit organization tied to federal housing funds. It was a position of trust, a role that gave her access to significant resources.
What happened, dude? 'Cause it seems like she, like, grew up poor, was in a bad situation, ended up finding herself in a better situation and making something, but, like, At some point, she's got to go off the rails. I mean, you don't just pull someone out to the lake, murder them, and then wait 2 hours and try and figure out what you're going to say. That's not something that a normal human being just does. Like, you got to be some type of messed up here.
Meant to help those in need.
We got to start seeing some signs of something.
To the
Or this
outside
is
world,
flip switch. That's
Lori
crazy.
Barnes had overcome her difficult beginnings and become a pillar of her community.
That's what I'm saying.
When Lori and Larry married, they brought together a blended family of 8 children,
What
Larry's
happened?
2 and Lori's 6, along with 15 grandchildren and eventually
Dude, that was
a
the blurriest photo I've ever
great-grandchild.
seen.
It was a large, sprawling clan, and the couple embraced it fully. They owned a secluded cabin that they lovingly called Our Paradise, a place where the whole family would gather for holidays and celebrations.
Dude, this sounds
From
like
the
such a wholesome
outside,
family
the
from the
marriage
outside.
looked like a fairy tale.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Dean Eisenberg would later describe it as absolutely perfect. Friends used the word soulmates. A colleague who knew them both said Larry trusted Lori completely, without reservation. They traveled together constantly.
shit.
Her
Alright.
mother seemed with Larry, noting the way he looked at Lori with genuine admiration. The
This all
stepchildren
just
on
sounds
both
good,
sides
like-
appeared to get along. Larry, despite being a tough and frugal man, had a warmth that extended to his new extended family. But certain details, invisible at the time, would later take on different meaning. Larry prided himself on fiscal responsibility. It was central to who he was, the man who taught his kids never to be lazy, never to waste, always to earn. He managed their money carefully, keeping track of every dollar. This was something Lori knew well, and yet there was something Larry didn't know, something that existed in a parallel world hidden from his view,
Here we
growing
go.
larger and
Dude, if
more
she has a whole
dangerous with
secret
each
life, I
passing
swear
month.
I'm gonna freak the fuck out. That'd be crazy.
The day was February 13th.
I don't think you ever really. I don't know if this would be sexist to say or something, but I don't know if you ever really see women like go and create a whole secret life. Usually that's only men. Usually only men are out here like going out and having like women, yeah, women and men both cheat, yes. But usually when it's this elaborate, like if she's about to have a whole secret life, that's usually only the men. Women usually don't go that far and do all that. So we got to see what's going on. Maybe it was influenced by like money or something, power, position. Let's see.
2018.
See what we got going on.
A Tuesday, the day before Valentine's Day. Larry and Lori had plans. They would take their boat out on Lake Coeur d'Alene before sunrise to watch the dawn break over the water. It was the kind of romantic gesture that fit their public image as devoted partners. After the boat ride, they intended to have a special Valentine's breakfast together. They left their home while it was still dark, the winter cold, sharp and biting. The lake was quiet at that hour, the water dark and calm. They launched the boat and headed out onto the water as the first hints of light began to appear on the horizon. According to Lori's account, everything was normal at first. They were out there together, watching the sky change colors, enjoying the peace of the early morning. Then, she said, something went wrong with the motor. Larry leaned toward it to investigate. He gave her a strange look. She would later mention something about stroke-like symptoms, a sudden change in his demeanor. And then he fell overboard, into the frigid February water. That was her version. What happened next, according to the official timeline, was a gap. A period of approximately 2 hours during which Lori did not call for help. When asked about this later,
What are you
she
doing for
explained
2
that
hours?
she didn't want to leave the area where Larry had fallen, that she was searching, that she was hoping. At approximately 2 hours after the
No,
incident,
there's more
she
going on.
finally dialed 911.
There's more going on.
When
There's no way.
rescuers
There's no
arrived,
way.
they found Lori with visible injuries, a bloody nose, which she explained came from trying to save her husband. The boat was intact. Larry was nowhere to be found. The water temperature that morning was in the low 40s.
Did they fight?
In
Get into
water,
a
that
fist
cold
fight?
survival time without rescue is measured in minutes, not hours. The search for Larry Eisenberg began immediately after the 911 call. Divers entered the days past, describing her grief, her shock, her devastation at losing her husband in such a sudden, tragic accident. About a week
I
after
mean,
the
that's the orange
incident,
jumpsuit,
Lori
so
wrote a
she was
letter
doing
to
something
friends and
out here.
family, describing the
Obviously,
morning
if it
in
was just an
emotional
accident, it wouldn't be in this
detail:
video.
the trip to the lake, the accident, her desperate attempts to save him. The narrative she presented was one of a widow in
I
mourning.
mean, you were desperate, but you weren't desperate to save him. You were desperate to get rid of him. I don't even care if I'm making assumptions because we already saw her in an orange jumpsuit, so obviously it's about to take a twist.
But beneath the surface, investigators were already troubled. The 2-hour delay before calling 911 didn't sit right.
Yep,
The details of her story seemed to
yep,
shift slightly with each telling.
yep.
And then there were the injuries. Lori's bloody nose, which she attributed to rescue efforts, raised questions about what
How?
exactly had happened on that boat. On March 1st,
I
2018,
got a bloody nose for
Larry
diving in water.
Eisenberg's body was recovered from the lake about 2.5 weeks after he disappeared. The discovery brought a measure of closure to
Man, they're not
those who
going to
had
be able
been
to get
waiting and
anything off that
hoping,
body after two
but
and a
it
half weeks in
also
the
marked the
water.
beginning of a new phase,
Not a thing.
one that would reveal something no one expected. The examiner began the examination. They expected to find evidence consistent with drowning. A man in his
Or
late
could they?
60s
I thought after
falling
two and
into
a half weeks
frigid
into the
water.
water that it all would be gone. Everything would be like, no way, dude. Technology's crazy.
His body submerged for weeks. The cause of death seemed obvious. But science told a different story. The medical examiner found something unexpected.
We
Larry
gash.
Eisenberg had not drowned. The cause of death was diphenhydramine toxicity, an
How do you even
overdose of Benadryl, the common antihistamine found in medicine cabinets across America. The concentration in his blood was
If she drugged him,
7,100
how'd she get a bloody
nanograms per
nose?
milliliter, a level so far above therapeutic doses that it could only have been achieved through massive, deliberate ingestion. To put this in perspective, a normal dose produces blood levels far, far lower than what was found in Larry's system. This was no longer a tragic accident on a cold February morning. This was a homicide investigation. Suddenly, every detail took on new significance. The romantic sunrise trip, the motor problems, the strange look Lori described, the 2-hour delay, the letter to friends and family, carefully crafted to establish a narrative, the bloody nose. And then investigators discovered something else. On the very day Larry disappeared, Lori had been exposed publicly for a completely different crime, one that would provide the missing piece of the puzzle. The double life Lori Eisenberg had been leading for years was about to collapse. As executive director of the North Idaho Housing Coalition, Lori had access to federal funds intended to help low-income families with housing.
No.
Over a period of years, she had systematically stolen from this organization.
So she grew up absolutely poor, and then she stole money that was supposed to go and help poor people have better living arrangements. Sorry, I started. That just absolutely fucking disturbed me. There's no way. Look at her eyes, dude. Look at that. Look at the way she's just looking. She just looks weird and evil,
creating
dude. I
false
hate that. You can
invoices
see it
and
in her
fake
eyes,
expenses,
dude. Always.
setting up shell companies in her daughter's names, and siphoning money into her own pockets and those of her children. The total amount she embezzled, over $500,000. 4 of her 6 daughters were implicated. Amber Hosking received approximately $16,500.
So the whole family's shitty.
Jessica Barnes received a...
Dude, watch it be that he found out that she was doing it. You're good, bro. Watch it. This is going to be where she found out that the dad found out that they were out here embezzling the money from this company when they were supposed to go to poor people, and $100 he threatened to turn her ass in. And she was like, well, drug overdose, sorry. Fucking crazy, dude.
$15,500.
Look at all of them.
Tracy Tesh and April Barnes also received stolen funds. All 4 would eventually face federal charges.
If you guys are so
Larry
broke, maybe stop
Eisenberg
fucking
knew
eating
nothing
everything.
about this. The man who prided himself on fiscal responsibility, who taught his children to be straight arrows, who trusted his wife completely. He had no idea that she had been stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars and that federal investigators were closing in. The exposure was coming. And when Larry found out, his world would shatter. The woman he loved, the community leader he admired, the partner he trusted.
Called that
She was a
shit.
thief
Called
facing
that
federal
shit.
prosecution.
Called that shit.
The financial security he had worked his entire life to build would be threatened by restitution payments and legal fees. His reputation in the community would be tainted by association. Prosecutors would later argue that this impending exposure was the motive for murder. Lori couldn't let Larry discover the truth. She couldn't face the confrontation,
So he didn't even figure it
the
out yet.
divorce, the complete
She was scared of him
destruction of the
finding
life
out.
she had constructed. And so, according to the prosecution's theory, she chose a different path.
What?
After Larry's death, Lori continued the deception. The letter to friends and family was part of it, establishing herself as a grieving widow, deflecting suspicion. But investigators found more troubling evidence of planning. Digital forensics revealed something chilling. While Larry and Lori were in Florida on their bucket list trip, someone had been conducting Google searches about drowning, currents, and deep water.
Dude, these people are so stupid always. Just why do all these people, every time they, especially older people, when they go to commit something, like a crime, a murder, something like that, these motherfuckers will straight up go on Google and be like, how to rob a bank. They're gonna know you search that. Where's the back door to this bank? They know you're going in there now. They know who did it. Like, how do you drown someone? Oh, now my husband suddenly died and I took 2 hours to call 911. Must be an accident.
Searches were traced to Lori. And there was another detail, small but significant. After Larry's disappearance, one of his friends received a text message that appeared to be from Larry's phone.
Nice.
But something was wrong with it. The message contained an emoji. People who knew Larry well said he never used it.
Dude, I said this in the last video too. They always take the phone, they always try to act like the person, but they don't take the 30 fucking seconds to scroll through all their messages. Like, it is so easy to copy the way someone texts. All you have to do is open up 4 message strands, see how they talk. If you see in fucking 6 message strands that he hasn't added a single emoji, then you're just an idiot.
Emojis,
Like, how are you this
ever.
dumb? I mean, you also are
Phone
embezzling
records
from poor
analysis
people,
showed
so
that Lori, on the other hand,
dumb,
used them
heartless.
regularly. Then came the will. Investigators discovered handwritten changes to Larry's estate documents, changes that would have shifted 80% of his assets to Lori's 6 daughters, leaving only
change the will
20%
too.
to
Change
Larry's
the will,
own 2
Google how to
children,
kill him.
Dean and Jessica. The alterations had not gone through proper legal channels. They appeared to be part of a plan to redirect Larry's wealth after his death. The investigation into Larry Eisenberg's death moved on 2 parallel tracks: the federal embezzlement case and the state homicide investigation. The federal
If this girl
case
ever has a
moved
chance of
first.
getting out, she better just be
Lori
gone.
was arrested and charged with wire fraud and theft from programs receiving federal funds. The evidence was overwhelming. Years of false invoices, fake companies, money trails leading directly to her and the federal
we
charges,
got you.
and was sentenced to 60 months in federal prison. Guilty to the federal charges and was sentenced to 60 months in federal
60 months for stealing 500,000? Dude, I say it all the time. It's like, some of these crimes, dude, it's just like you don't even get in trouble. That's insane.
prison, plus ordered to pay full restitution and fines. But the
Oh, she get
murder
a year
case
for
was
every
more
100,000
complex.
that was stolen?
Prosecutors needed to prove not just that Larry had been poisoned, but that Lori was responsible. The evidence, while compelling, was largely circumstantial. The pieces included the 2-hour delay before calling 911, the Google searches about drowning and currents conducted during their Florida trip, the diphenhydramine toxicity that had nothing to do with falling into water, the text message
How'd
with
she
the
get him to
emoji
take
sent
'em?
from Larry's phone,
That's what
the
I want to know.
altered will documents,
It doesn't seem like
the
someone
timing
that's
of the
just dumb enough
exposure
to
of
just
the
take
embezzlement,
multiple
and the
pills.
phone records that showed Larry had
Let me just
complained
above
to
my
his
face.
doctor about strange symptoms. shakes, and foggy thinking during their travels. Had Lori been poisoning him gradually, even before the boat trip? The symptoms Larry described to his doctor suggested he might have been ingesting something
No
harmful without his
way.
knowledge. In February 2020,
Germ, I know you'll remember. This is like the rat poisoning, dude.
exactly 2 years after Larry's death, Lori Eisenberg was charged with first-degree murder. The charging documents cited aggravating factors, including the use of poison and lying in wait or torture. There was one complication, however. Prosecutors acknowledged they could not determine exactly how Larry ingested the fatal dose of diphenhydramine. Was it in his coffee? In food? In a drink on the boat that morning? The mechanism remained unclear. What was clear was that the level of the drug in his system was lethal, and that it hadn't gotten there by accident. The case did not go to a full trial. Instead, in 2021, Lori Eisenberg entered an offered plea to second-degree murder. An offered
No.
plea is a specific legal mechanism in which a defendant does
Dude,
not
if
admit
she does
guilt,
not
but
go
acknowledges that the
away for
prosecution
the
has
rest of her
enough
life, I'm gonna
evidence
be
to likely
pissed.
secure a conviction. It allows for sentencing without a full admission of responsibility, a legal technicality that would later cause significant pain to Larry's family. At the sentencing hearing, Lori spoke.
There we fucking
She
go.
acknowledged that she was responsible for Larry's death, but her explanation stunned the courtroom. She claimed that she had intended to harm herself that morning, not Larry. She said she had prepared a drink laced with Benadryl for her own consumption, planning to end her own life because she couldn't face the exposure of the embezzlement beverage
Bullshit.
by mistake.
Bullshit.
The evidence, the
Bullshit.
Google searches,
Bullshit.
the careful letter to friends establishing
But
an
say,
accident
no.
narrative. The court found Lori's explanation implausible. It simply didn't fit the facts.
Let's go.
Larry's family members addressed the court with raw emotion. His daughter Jessica McPherson spoke of the permanent hole in her soul left by her father's death, and the impossibility of finding closure when the person responsible still refused to tell the truth. She described how Lori's offered plea, avoiding a full admission of guilt, felt like salt on the wounds.
Yeah.
Even Lori's own stepdaughter, Amber, spoke
If
against her.
there's evidence that, like, you clearly did it, like Google searches, poisoning, this, that, blah, blah, blah. He had previous poisoning, the doctors, this, that, blah, blah, blah. Like, you want to say that you tried to do it all the same day. Cool. Why was he being poisoned before? If there's evidence, why are they allowed to still have a plea? That's like someone being on camera, robbing a bank, and then saying, like, oh, I'm going to take a plea. And they just allow him? No. Like, you're guilty. I don't give a fuck what
She
you say.
testified that Larry had been
2
a
hours
wonderful
before she called
father
911.
figure and grandfather to her and her siblings.
It's crazy.
She told
This
the
makes
court
no
that
sense.
her mother had manipulated the family
Yeah.
and that she and her sisters did not support Lori, did not stand by her.
Didn't they get money
Looking
from
back,
her?
Amber expressed regret that she hadn't cooperated with investigators earlier, before the full scope of her mother's deception became clear. The sentence was life in prison with a minimum fixed term of 30 years before parole eligibility.
Oh, she'll be gone.
Combined with her federal sentence for embezzlement, Lori Eisenberg will not be eligible for release until 2050, when she will be 97 years
Does
old.
it say
Eligible for
2015 or
release
50?
until 2050,
50.
when she will be 97 years old. The case had split the family down the middle. Larry's 2 children lost their father and watched the woman who killed him escape a full murder conviction through a legal maneuver. They sat through hearings and sentencing, carrying grief that had no outlet.
Oh,
Lori's 6
shit,
daughters
dude.
were left to names and then killed her husband to cover her crimes.
Uh-huh.
The woman who had taught them to live right into her schemes, using their identities for fraud. One daughter, Chrislyn Woolston, had posted Lori's $75,000 bail after her arrest, believing in her mother despite the mounting evidence. When Lori later
I don't agree with that. I don't care. I've said it 1,000 times. I don't care. These family members, they go way too far to defend them people. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you. I got one of my cousins right now in the chat, bro. And like, if it came out where something like this happened and there was clear evidence or something like that, bro, I'm sorry, dude. You did that shit. Like, I ain't gonna be out here going around making extra statements or nothing like that, but I ain't gonna be bailing your ass out.
Appeared while out on bail,
You're gonna have to sit in
triggering a
there.
manhunt before she was eventually located. Chrislyn was left financially responsible for that bond. She later described the pain of realizing that her mother didn't care if she hurt her own daughter in her attempts to escape accountability.
Mhm.
The woman who had raised her, who had taken her to church every Sunday, had abandoned her without a set trail. On Dateline, she stated clearly, "We do not support her. We do
Get
not stand."
bailed. She got bailed
Mother-daughter
out by him.
bond
Fuck him.
irreparably broken. Daughter
All right,
doesn't
what's
remember.
going on here? Is this
Children
just
remember him differently than the headlines do. To them, he wasn't the victim in a murder case. He was the man who taught them about hard work and honesty. He was the father who took them hunting and fishing, who loved his dog Echo with pure, uncomplicated affection. He was someone who crossed items off his bucket list with childlike excitement, watching a rocket launch, riding a fan boat, learning to sail. At 68, Larry believed he had earned a peaceful retirement with a woman he loved. He trusted Lori
that's
completion
sad,
beyond
dude.
one family's reputation for community service. And how does
See if anything
someone
else
go
about the
from
case is
Community
gonna come up here.
Volunteer of the Year to Eisen with Mount Preservation while Larry's grandchildren grow up without him? Endings. Some wounds don't heal. Larry Eisenberg was more than a crime. Who consider subscribing to the channel and sharing
There you
this
go,
video.
y'all. Go ahead, subscribe to their channel and everything. Go ahead, give them their props, but that's absolutely crazy. Why the hell did she get the chance to put in a plea? It doesn't make any sense to me. Why do they always let these people put in pleas? It absolutely makes no sense. She went ahead, she Googled it, waited 2 hours. There was clear signs of previous poisoning. Dude, I wouldn't even offer them a plea. Why is that even a thing? We give these criminals too many breaks. It's honestly very, very disturbing. Very disturbing. But, what the fuck do I know?